Hola mis amigos y bienvenidos a una lección breve sobre sé impersonal. You might want to take note of this image that we're starting out with. Se aceptan tarjetas de crédito y débito. It would be a good idea to return to it and think about it later after you've learned all about sé impersonal. But for now, we'll get started. I'd actually like to start this lesson by dipping into your prior knowledge a little bit. ¿Cuándo usamos sé? ¿Qué es lo que ya sabemos? This word sé is one that you've seen before in Spanish, and it would be a good idea to organize what you already know. So take a moment, even pause the presentation if you need to, and brainstorm about what sé means in Spanish, what you already know about it, and when you have previously used it. Bueno, so far we officially know two uses of sé. One is when it's used as an indirect object pronoun, like in this kind of situation. El médico da la receta a Lola. The doctor gives the prescription to Lola. That's a sentence that can be shortened down to se la da. He gives it to her. The it being the prescription and the se being to her, the indirect object. Preparo el pollo para mi abuela. I prepare chicken for my grandmother. Can be shortened to se lo preparo. The lo takes the place of the pollo, and the se takes the place of the abuela. If direct and indirect objects and even double object pronouns are something you need to think about, it'd be a great idea to go back on the super site and do some practice with those. Direct objects were in chapter 5, indirect objects were in chapter 6, and then double object pronouns like this were in chapter 8. So that's a great place to review if you need to. And número dos, se can also be used as a reflexive verb, and this has actually been covered in Aventuras en capítulo 7, if you want to go back to it. Juan se levanta a las 6 de la mañana. Susana se ducha después de correr. In this type of use of se, it usually means self, like Juan gets himself up at 6 in the morning, and Susana showers herself after running. So now we have the pleasure of adding in a third use of sé that is called sé impersonal. And I love to teach with examples before throwing rules at people. So here's some great examples of sé impersonal in use. Se habla español. Se venden gorras. Se busca. Ay, se comen peces aquí. Y, ¿cómo se dice? Which is a frequent question in Espanol. ¿Cómo se dice? All of these are good examples of sé impersonal being used correctly. So what is sé impersonal really? It's used to express something general, not specific. When we use this structure, we're not being specific about what individual does or did an action. We're talking about it in general. We're just saying that something gets done or that one does it. It's very impersonal. That's why we call it sé impersonal. Unos ejemplos. Se trabaja mucho en la universidad. I'm not saying you work a lot in college. I'm not saying my friend Rosa works a lot in college. I'm just saying people work a lot in college. One translation might be one works a lot in college. Another translation might be you work a lot in college. It's just something general and personal. So you put se in front of the verb. And it's always the third person form of the verb. It would either be trabaja or trabajan. In this case, trabaja because we're singular, but we'll get into that in a moment. Here's an example then of a plural. Se toman vitaminas para no estar enfermo. This is your example of a plural because more than one thing is being taken. One takes vitamins in order to not be sick, or vitamins are taken in order to not be sick is another way to translate it. So the two examples we've looked at so far, se trabaja and se toman, a singular and a plural. You'll never use the yo form with this. You'll never use the tú form with it. You'll never use the nosotros form. It's very, very simple. Third person, and you stick se in front of it. That's all there is to it. Bien. So, digging in more about ser impersonal and what it really means, ¿qué significa? If you encountered the following verb, se viaja, given the fact that viajar means to travel, you might think of it as meaning one travels or they travel. And it's not a specific they, like my aunt and uncle. It's just people. Ya travel, you know how we explain things like that sometimes. Ya do something, and it's an impersonal kind of expression. Or traveling is done. Those are all ways that you could translate se viaja. Bien, I've mentioned the singular and plural, but it bears reiterating. Se habla español. Spanish is spoken, but se hablan, plural, español y francés, because in the second sentence, more than one thing is being spoken. Por eso, plural verb, se hablan español y francés. Se vende ropa, one thing is sold, but se venden medicamentos. Medicines are sold is plural. So this is really fun that we always have third person, habla or hablan, vende or vending. You just have to look at the rest of the sentence. Are you dealing with something singular or plural? Singular or plural? And that's the biggest decision you'll have to make with this. But note that it's always se out there in front of the verb. That's why it's impersonal se and nothing else. Gang, so you're already ready for some practice. This is a straightforward concept, and I've got 5 sentences here for you. The sentences that follow are signs that you might see around a school or a university. They tell what is done or what one does in various locations, so you should use se impersonal. Pause the presentation and give it your best effort at translating these ideas. Keep in mind that you're going to use se impersonal, and then always be thinking about singular versus plural. And of course, I'll have some answers and explanations for you on the next slide. Buena suerte. Bien, and here are your respuestas. Número 1, se come en la cafetería. One eats in the cafeteria. There's no reason to make it plural, so it's singular. Número 2, se leen libros en la biblioteca. More than one thing is read, and that's why it's plural, leen. Se venden bolígrafos en la librería. Pens are sold in the bookstore. More than one thing is being sold, that's why it's plural. 4, se estudia en el salón de clase. One studies, or ya study, in the classroom. Y por fin, número 5, se escriben mensajes en el laboratorio de computadoras. Another plural, because more than one message is getting written. Bien, buena suerte. You'll have a little more practice with this, of course, as part of your tarea, and I'll leave you with one final thought. Here's something to inspire you, clase. Las cosas no se dicen, se hacen, porque al hacerlas se dicen solas. And a rough translation might be something like, things are not said, they are done, because upon doing them, they are said alone. Meaning that actions speak louder than words, ¿verdad? And we all know that. Muy bien, pues muchas gracias a todos. Buena suerte. And as always, don't hesitate to let me know if you have questions. Muchas gracias.